Shane has a very good question. Why can't one Squidoo lens have more links to more than one page in your money site? In this example, the Squidoo lens links to my money site and it links to a WordPress blog. Well, Shane, that's a great question. The answer is partly to make it a little less confusing for folks to see. You certainly could do that. Okay. The other reason is that the more links that are coming out of this Squidoo lens, the less juice the Squidoo lens has to pass to other properties. Think of it as a water bucket, right? We got a bucket full of water here. The more holes we poke in it, right, the less water there is in the bucket. Okay? So think of this water as link juice, and you kind of get the idea. Okay, some good questions here. I really appreciate it. Always one-way links. That's a good question. Are these links pointing out of the Squidoo lens? Again, just an example. It doesn't have to be Squidoo lens. Are all these links just one way? Do you ever have reciprocal links? Like this WordPress points back to the Squidoo lens. The answer is no. I never reciprocal link between any of these properties. Okay, that's the short answer. Lots of I could keep going on that, but there's a lot of questions to address. Okay, should each site have a static IP address on a different hosting account? Now that question has layers, like an onion. It's got many layers. All right. Let's see how to address this. Okay. Kurt has apparently been around for a little bit and understands that mini-nets used to be built on separate separate URLs. Okay, so instead of using these Web 2 type URLs that somebody else owns and we just have a page on, mini-nets used to, and still are to some extent, used to be just websites that we would link together, right? Other websites that we owned, right? And in order to make this structure effective, all these satellite websites that we have in our mini-net had to be on different IP addresses. An IP address is basically like your physical address of your house. Your IP address identifies, it's a footprint, it identifies where this site lives, right? And if multiple sites in your mini-net have the same IP address, well then it's very, very obvious to Google what you're trying to accomplish here. Okay, again, you run the risk of being penalized. That's why we want to have different IP addresses. With the advent of Web 2.0 pages, though, we now have the ability to create free pages on somebody else's URL that all have different IP addresses, right? Because Squidoo isn't just one website on one server. It's got a ton of different, it's run across multiple servers. It's got multiple IP addresses. Tumblr has a different IP address than Squidoo and WordPress and Blogger and so on and so forth, right? So that's the advantage of using these Web 2.0 spots. One of the perils behind that, though, is that you don't own these URLs. You don't control all the ads that show up on your pages. You don't control all the links, in fact, that show up on those pages, diminishing some of the link juice value that these can contain. So that's kind of the difference, right? Sure, you could do the same thing with your own URL, so you control everything. You can monetize the traffic that hits your mini-net sites, right? You can certainly do that. But what you want to make sure is that you own, that you have SEO hosting, okay? And I'm going to recommend that you go and talk to Todd Spears, a man by the name of Todd Spears, if you want to get yourself some SEO hosting, okay? His website is WebHost for SEO. He's got the best, most convenient system to use in order to build mini-nets like what we're talking out of your own URLs. All right? Takes a special kind of hosting, but it can pay dividends. It certainly can. So that was a little bit more technical than I was hoping to get on that, because that's going to be confusing for a lot of folks. Okay, if that's just too much over your head, you started yawning just now when I was talking, right? Which was probably Mark. He was probably yawning during that because he likes to pay for his traffic. But if you're yawning during that, just ignore all that and stick to the Web 2.0 properties, because there's a ton of them, right? There's just a ton of them. There's 6 right here, and that's a really small sample. Todd Spears' URL. Hey, how about I just show it? I forget I'm on a webinar sometimes. Web host for SEO.com. There we go. This is Todd Spears' website. Okay, make your mini nets rock. See, he's even talking about mini nets on the sales page. Right. Todd's a great guy. He's another godfather figure in the SEO world, especially when it comes to mini nets. A guy who I've learned from as well. Okay, he'll treat you very, very well. He's got great bedside manner, as it were. Okay, Shane's got a great question here. Are link wheels and mini nets still as effective now since Google Caffeine update? I'm going to say I don't think they're any less effective because of the caffeine update. Because all caffeine was about was speed. Okay, about providing you search results faster. I think they had less to do with the technicalities behind what your links are worth. So the short answer is no, I don't think they're any less effective because of the caffeine update. They are not, I can tell you they're not as effective as they once were. I used to be able to do a structure like this years and years ago, and boom, it was rankings for competitive phrases, really competitive phrases. Okay, it doesn't work like that anymore, but it does have value. That's why we're having this conversation. Okay. Carry on. Tons of questions here, guys. Appreciate it. Jared would like to know, is it a good idea to then build mini nets of other Web 2.0 properties for each of your first ring mini nets? Oh, Jared. Jared, always thinking. Yes, absolutely. Here's what Jared's talking about, in case you didn't get that. Jared's suggesting, well, if this has value, would there be value to building a mini net around each of these properties, right? Doing some drawing here. Okay? So now this Skidoo has its own mini net supporting it. And yes, there's some value to that. I think